What's up everyone, my name is PlatinumHowler and today I'm bringing you the start of a brand new mini-series on my channel. I decided to join this showdown tournament hosted in the Mount Silver League server. They host a lot of cool tournaments that I like. This is now the third tournament of theirs that I'll be participating in. And this one is called EAmons. It's based off the AAA metagame on Showdown, which stands for Almost Any Ability. Of course, with me not doing Showdown stuff very often, I was not aware that this was an actual metagame on Showdown itself, but I think that actually made this whole tournament idea more exciting to me because I think this idea is so cool. Basically what the tournament is all about is you draft 8 Mons to your team. There's 5 tiers, your standard tiered draft format, except for the one main difference I think is that tier 2 Mons, instead of being worth 120 points, are worth 140 points. So for the draft, you're supposed to take 1 Mon from each tier, 1 through 5, and then you have 300 free points to use for your last 3 Mons. On top of that, you're given 800 ability points to spend to add on certain abilities to your draft picks. So your draft picks come packaged with their 1 or 2 regular abilities. They don't come packaged with their hidden ability. You don't get that for free. You would have to pay extra to get their hidden abilities on them. So they come packaged with their regular abilities plus the abilities that you decide to put onto them. So this could make for some really fun combinations, sets, and strategies that you wouldn't otherwise see. It should be noted that this is also an open Z-move tournament. Any of your 8 draft picks are allowed to use any Z-move that they want, as long as it's not Omni Boost, of course, because Omni Boost is banned pretty much everywhere. You can imagine with Mons like Slacking and Archeops with detrimental abilities that if you were able to give them any ability that you wanted, those Pokemon would be pretty broken. So naturally, those 2 Pokemon, along with others like Kartana, which are normally allowed, are banned in this tournament. There are also certain abilities that are banned from being drafted, such as Huge Power, Speed Boost, and Fur Coat, to name a few. So obviously this tournament is not meant to be hyper competitive. I took this opportunity to draft a whole bunch of new Mons that I have little to no experience with. And we're just going to try to have some fun with this. So this video is basically just an explanation, intro video to what the tournament is all about. So when I get into the games that I plan on live comming, all of you kind of understand what's going on and aren't so confused by this wacky format. Getting into what I picked and why now, I had the 3rd pick of the draft out of 16 coaches. So first round, I was able to scoop up something really cool that I wanted to try, and that is Blacephalon. Blacephalon, I immediately wanted to give the Magic Guard ability for one main reason, and that is the fact that Mind Blown, of course, is its signature move, which is incredibly powerful. It's base 150 fire type move. But the one drawback, of course, is that it takes away 50% of your HP every time you use it, so you can only use it a maximum of twice unless you have like a citrus berry or leftovers on it. But with Magic Guard, Blacephalon doesn't take any damage at all from clicking Mind Blown, so Mind Blown, also being a 100% accurate attack, is very spammable with this Blacephalon carrying Magic Guard as its ability. I almost see it functioning like a pseudo Alakazam with a Sash. Obviously, Sash Magic Guard Alakazam is pretty common. It will guarantee live any hit because it doesn't take any damage from rocks or weather effects or anything like that. So this is basically a more powerful but slightly slower version of a Magic Guard Alakazam. One thing it does have over Alakazam though is access to Flame Charge, so it can boost its speed while still be able to run a Focus Sash. And this is something I definitely want to take advantage of at least once with this Blacephalon. Flame Charge is by no means a waste of a move slot on this Pokemon, especially with its surprisingly good base 127 attack. Magic Guard cost 100 ability points, which was the highest tier value for abilities that you could draft to Pokemon. And Mold Breaker was 80 ability points in the second tier value. And I wanted to give Blacephalon Mold Breaker after the fact because I was seeing a lot of Steel types drafted with Flash Fire. So if I go up against something like a Celesteela that has Flash Fire on it, I want to be able to hit that with Fire type moves. So that's why I gave Blacephalon Mold Breaker. I do not want to get I do not want this Blacephalon to get 1v1'd by a Celesteela or a Scizor. That would suck. And of course it still has access to its signature Ultra Beast ability and Beast Boost to get off those Beast Boost sweeps. But as I mentioned, I mainly drafted this thing to run it with Magic Guard, most likely run it with a Sash to guarantee one hit off and just spam the crap out of Mind Blown with no drawback. Getting into my second pick now, I had to wait quite a while for the draft to snake back around for it to be my turn again. And there was one specific defensive Mon slash trick up my sleeve that I wanted to give a try, and that was Marvel Scale Togekiss. So Marvel Scale cost 80 points, which is most commonly seen on Melodic. Makes Melodic really physically bulky when it's holding a Flame Orb. But the advantage that Togekiss has over Melodic is the access to both Trick and Psycho Shift. Psycho Shift being one of my favorite moves that I have already ran in the IBL. So with Marvel Scale, not only can you burn yourself and prevent yourself from being toxic while boosting your defense, but you can then also burn your opponent's physical attackers and cripple them significantly. So with this trick now, I have the potential to have all three statuses on this Mon. I can Psycho Shift the burn over to a physical attacker, I can use Toxic on a wall to put it on a timer, or I can use Thunder Wave onto a wall which I could attempt to flinch down if I was using the Serene Grace set, or just a fast threat in general to slow them down so the rest of my team can outspeed them. I did mention Serene Grace, which fortunately is not one of Togekiss's hidden abilities, so I still have access to using the standard Serene Grace set. So if Togekiss has a better offensive matchup than a defensive matchup, I totally have the ability to run like a Scarfed Serene Grace set with Air Slash and go for a bunch of flinches. Other great utility options on this pick that I value are Defog to keep rocks off the field in case I'm not running a Magic Guard Blacephalon. If I wanted to run Mold Breaker so I can break through the Steel types, I don't want to be switching that thing on rocks very often. It gets Wish to heal up the rest of my team, and the other thing that I really like about Togekiss is access to Baton Pass. Just for general momentum, Togekiss is very easily able to threaten out Dark types that Blacephalon doesn't like going against. So if I can get this Togekiss in and threaten those Dark types out, go for a Baton Pass, I can get Blacephalon in once again in a more favorable matchup and do some big damage to the opposing team. With my next pick, I'm going to take Hippowdon, which is a second tier 1, and that's going to cut significantly into my 300 free points budget. Tier 1s cost 180 free points, so that means for my last two free picks, I basically have to take tier 4s or below. And the main reason I drafted this is not for a specific ability that it doesn't usually have, but actually for Sandstream, which it already gets as its regular ability, and then I can draft Sand Rush onto anything else that I want to benefit from the Sandstream. Hippowdon is so fat, it is really incredibly hard to take down. You can EV Hippowdon to take on pretty much anything you want it to. Great team support in Stealth Rocks, going to be able to whirlwind out threats that are setting up in its face. And for its hidden ability, if Sand doesn't have a good matchup in a particular game, I can always just give it Poison Heal. So if you decide to try to wear my Hippowdon down with Toxic, well, and that's instead you're going to be doing just the opposite. You're going to be healing my Hippowdon up for 12% each turn. This also means if I'm running a Poison Heal Hippowdon and I do get poisoned, I can take on bulky waters a lot better. I can recover up in front of them most of the time and not have to fear getting burned with the Scald. For my next pick, I was looking at tier 3s and I wanted to grab something that could really benefit with the Sand Rush ability now. And the Mon that I really wanted to draft was Haxorus. But unfortunately, Haxorus got sniped 2 picks before it was going to be my turn again. So I had to shake up my plan considerably. Not actually that considerably, because I still ended up taking another dragon type, and that dragon type is Tyrantrum. Now, I still would have preferred Haxorus over Tyrantrum because one thing that Haxorus has access to that Tyrantrum doesn't is Swords Dance. So, of course, Haxorus can Dragon Dance just like Tyrantrum can, but Swords Dance is a lot nicer on Haxorus when it already has that speed boost from Sand Rush. Tyrantrum, though, is still going to work just fine in Sand, because not only will its speed be boosted in a Sandstorm, but it will also get the special defense boost in Sandstorm thanks to it being a Rock type. I stand by my opinion that Haxorus would have been a much better pick in this situation, but Tyrantrum is still going to be a fun Mon to run under Sand with Sand Rush. The two I can see playing a lot differently from one another, but that doesn't mean that Tyrantrum here is a bad pick at all. Also, I gave it Rockhead again, which is its usual hidden ability, but of course I mentioned that Mons don't have access to their hidden abilities in this tournament for free. You have to pay for them for you to use them in this tournament. So I decided to pay for Rockhead on Tyrantrum in case Sand Rush or Sand in general didn't have a good matchup, just like I paid for Poison Heal on Hippowdon. So we're going to give Tyrantrum Rockhead just like it usually has, so I can spam Head Smash and pray for 80% accurate Head Smashes to hit with no recoil. Kind of like how I don't get hit with recoil by Mind Blown Magic Guard Blacephalon. So the last 4 picks are going to be all tier 4s and tier 5s, and what I'm looking for from those Mons are some momentum. I'm looking for Mons that can provide me momentum to get free switches into my more offensive threats such as Tyrantrum and Blacephalon. So for my 5th pick, I'm going to take Magneton. Magneton is going to be able to pressure out water types with a Volt Switch. So once again, that's not a favorable matchup for Blacephalon, so I can force those out to get Blacephalon in easier. Also, Tyrantrum doesn't really like going up against water types very much. I can also switch Magneton into water types a lot easier because I paid for Storm Drain on it. Now, Storm Drain is going to make it immune to water type moves as well as give it a special attack boost. Because I picked this as more of a pivot rather than an offensive threat, I mean, it does have a good special attack stat, but I can definitely see myself using this more of a bulky set with an Eviolite. The other ability that I paid for on Magneton was a rather cheap ability, only 40 points out of my 800 allotted. I wanted to give it Bulletproof because as of right now, my team doesn't really like switching into Ghost. And of course, one of the most prevalent Ghost type moves is Shadow Ball, and Bulletproof grants an immunity to Shadow Ball, which is nice. So if I were ever going up against something like a Gengar that pressures my team a lot, I can always switch in this Magneton to, if I'm running Bulletproof on it, I can be immune to both of its stabs in Sludge Bomb, Sludge Wave, and Shadow Ball. With this pick, I kind of bucked a trend of people taking Mons and then buying abilities on them that took away their weaknesses. So of course, Magneton's most glaring weakness is its ×4 weakness to ground, and I didn't pay for Levitate on Magneton, which I very easily could have, but I decided to give it Storm Drain instead because, cool, I could have an immunity to ground types, but what am I really doing back to those ground types in return? Not that much damage most of the time. I have a ground immunity in Togekiss that can switch into ground types if need be, and I have a Hippowdon that's just bulky as hell and can take on any Mon that it desires, and as long as it doesn't hit it super effectively. My next pick is going to be another tier 4, and it's going to carry on with the theme of momentum grabbers. It's going to be Mesprit, which of course can come in and take hits that it needs to, U-turn out into more offensive threats. And I paid for Psychic Surge on Mesprit to specifically to block priority against my more offensive threats. Of course, Blacephalon is pretty frail. It will die to common priority moves such as Sucker Punch or Aqua Jet that are both super effective against it. So if I have Psychic Surge up and Blacephalon in, those moves cannot be used against me. Also, moves like Mach Punch can't be used against Tyrantrum. And then there's also the fact that a common ability that was drafted onto certain Pokemon was Triage. Triage, of course, is exclusive to Comfey at this point, but it gives Comfey +3 priority on healing moves such as Draining Kiss and Giga Drain. So one pick that I really liked was a triaged Golisopod. So that thing, it no longer is nerfed by its emergency exit ability. Instead, you can run triage on it. So that means that there's no need to run First Impression because you get priority Leech Life, which also heals your health. So that's just one example of how Psychic Surge can benefit me. That Golisopod would not, if I were to switch this Mesprit in with and activate my Psychic Surge, I take no damage from Leech Life if it's running Triage and its priority. Otherwise, if that Golisopod wants to hit me, it's going to have to be running Emergency Exit. Not only that, but given the right matchup, Mesprit can be an offensive threat in its own right under Psychic Terrain. Obviously, it's no Tapu Lele, it's weaker and slower than a Tapu Lele is, but it does have much nicer bulk, so much nicer bulk and I would say better coverage as well. And it just has a better support move pool in general. This is now my third Stealth Rocker on top of Hippowdon and Tyrantrum. And it also gets access to one of my favorite moves in Healing Wish. So if need be, I can heal up my offensive threats such as Tyrantrum or Blacephalon and give those a free switch and that way to punch holes through the opposing team. Next, I'm going to take my tier 5 that I knew I wanted from the beginning of this draft, and that is going to be Poliwrath. One reason that I wanted this is because one of its regular abilities is Damp, and if you didn't know, Pokemon with the Damp ability actually take no damage from Mind Blown. Damp prevents moves like Self-Destruct and Explosion from working, and it also prevents Mind Blown from working. So I wanted to take Poliwrath off the board for that reason, because Poliwrath would have been a very good response to Blacephalon. It would have been a great switch into Mind Blown. But of course, that's not the only reason why I took Poliwrath. Poliwrath with no guard is able to set up with 100% accurate Z Hypnosis and then set up against anything that it wants that it has put to sleep. It can set up with either a Bulk Up or a Belly Drum if it's really brave and wants to cut its HP in half. And then, much like a Machamp, it can fire off 100% accurate Dynamic Punches, which will always confuse the opponent. Another cool move that Poliwrath has access to that I like is Circle Throw. Functions in the same way as Dragon Tail. So I now have 3 forms of phasing on my team. I have Hippowdon with Roar or Whirlwind, and I could use Dragon Tail on Tyrantrum if I wanted to. And also Circle Throw on Poliwrath, that will always hit unless it's against the Ghost type, which is immune to fighting type moves. But yeah, I really want to get a Z Hypnosis sweep off with Poliwrath at some point. For my last pick, there wasn't anything in particular that I desperately wanted to fill the last slot on my team. I had to take a tier 4 or a tier 5 because that's all the points I had. And I also only had 40 ability points left to spend. So I decided to pick Shiftry, kind of a throwaway pick, honestly. Dark Aura was the best ability that I could afford. It's not a bad ability for Shiftry at all. It's going to boost the power of its dark type moves such as Foul Play and Priority Sucker Punch. Sucker Punch Priority is actually the only form of priority I have on this team outside of Extreme Speed Togekiss if I wanted to run Hustle Kiss with Extreme Speed. This is also a true ground resist, which both Blacephalon and Tyrantrum and Magneton are quite weak to. Of course, I have Togekiss, which is immune, and Mesprit, which is immune if it's running Levitate. And Hippowdon and Poliwrath can take on ground types fairly well as well. But Shiftry, although it is frail, resists ground, so it's able to switch into that. And it's also a dark type, so it's my only true ghost resist. If you don't count Bulletproof Magneton as a ghost resist, that is. Has the option to be a secondary defogger to Togekiss if need be, if I need to clear hazards off the field or get rid of screens or Aurora Veil or something like that. And it can also set Tailwind. Really, it gets a lot of similar utility options as Togekiss does, with a much different typing. And I also have the ability to take advantage of opposing weather, more specifically opposing sun, with Chlorophyll. Because I know for a fact that one Mon that was drafted and is absolutely terrifying is Drought Darmanitan. So if that were to come in and try to reset my weather, like if I were running Sand against that team, and Drought replace my Sand with Sun, I could potentially take advantage of that with my Shiftry and outspeed most, if not all, of his team. So those are the 8 Mons that I decided to take for this team. This, by far, is, I would say, the most fun team that I have ever drafted. It looks really bizarre on paper, but I cannot wait to use these this wacky combination of Pokemon. The main factor that I point to when I say that this is far from the best team on paper is that the speed tiers on this team are actually pretty terrible. Blacephalon at base 107 speed is my fastest Mon, and then I have 3 Mons that tie at base 80, being Mesprit, Shiftry, and Togekiss as my second fastest. And then I have 2 Mons at base 70, Magneton and Poliwrath, and then Tyrantrum is base 71. And then Hippowdon, of course, is slow as all hell because it's a hippo. You would expect a hippo to be slow. So not the most speedy team on paper, but I do have ways of potentially boosting my speed, such as Flame Charge Blacephalon, Sand Rush Tyrantrum, Shiftry in the Sun, or Z Hypnosis Poliwrath. All things that I'm super eager to try out. So yeah, that's the team, and the next step is playing the games. There will be 3 round-robin games, and if I do well enough, I could potentially move on to the semifinals and or finals of the tournament for a maximum of 5 games. So minimum of 3 games, maximum of 5, and I will be live comming those games. Won't be doing a team builder for them. I'll just be quickly, very quickly going over the Mons that I have brought to the games before the matches start. So yeah, the first match will be up next week, and I will post 1 match per week. Don't forget to leave a like, a comment, and to subscribe to the channel. And also, if you like the Twitter thing, you can also follow me on Twitter if you want. With that, I'm gonna get out of here and start prepping for these matches. Until next time.